Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina. Congressman
Thank
Frye.
you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing today. Thank you to the witnesses, to the parents in the room who are here, who have traveled far, the bravery, Ms. Hawkins, of dealing with the stuff that you dealt with yesterday with the death threats. I think that there's no place in this, and I'm going to go off the reservation a little bit here, and that there is a reason why Democrats are viewed by the American people at an all-time low. Is because they can't keep the main thing the main thing. We are here today, to be clear, 100%. Everyone knew the assignment when we got into this hearing room ahead of time. We are here to talk about children's safety online. And all I hear from the other side is rantings and ravings about the FTC. If you want to talk about the FTC, go do a 1-minute speech on the House floor. You want to talk about the FTC? Have a press conference. Here.
Will the gentleman yield?
No, I'm not. This is my time. Here, we are here to talk about children. But they can't seem to get it. And that's why they're viewed deeply unpopular by the American people right now. And in fact, the witness from the FTC spent 4 of her 5 minutes talking about how she was fired and not the actual subject while we're here. So that's frustrating to me, that there's broad bipartisan consensus on a lot of this stuff. We're here to examine that on ways that we can advance sensible policy. Ms. Hawkins, you talked about somebody from South Carolina, Mr. Guffey, who's a state representative, and his son Gavin, who was involved in a sextortion scheme. And I'm glad that law enforcement is doing something about it now, but that doesn't replace his son. And so what can we do as policymakers up here? There's a lot. Sextortion, AI-generated abuse, and imagery, online platforms turning a blind eye. These are all things that we recognize the danger is real, and it's accelerating what we have now. Ms. Soros, your testimony highlighted an astounding 1,325% increase in AI-generated child sexual abuse material. What are the challenges of law enforcement in identifying those under the current scheme, identifying and distinguishing AI-generated images from real victims?
Thank you for the question. That is a challenge both for NCMEC, that has a child victim identification program that works closely with law enforcement, and obviously all law enforcement agencies that are, when they see an image of the sexual abuse of a child, they often do not know where that child is. They need to identify that child, they need to locate that child. There's a lot of work that goes into that. Now that we have AI-generated imagery, and I'm told by the analysts at NCMEC that the technology is so good now that it is very, very difficult to distinguish. It was easier 6 months ago, a year ago, but now it is very difficult to distinguish between an image that is AI generated of a child being sexually abused and an actual image of a child being sexually abused. So what we have is a flood of imagery, some that is, I'll call it fake, but it's a digital forgery, and some that is a real child who might be in an actively abusive situation. And law enforcement, and again, and NCMEC in our support role, have to somehow decipher which are the real children. So we face the real danger that somebody will spend time trying to identify a child who simply does not exist. It is an AI-generated child, while a real child currently in an abusive situation waits in the queue.
You think legislation could properly address that challenge that we have?
I think it could, again, if we look especially upstream so that we can prevent this technology from even being allowed to create that imagery to begin with.
Thank you for that. Ms. Morrell, you know tech companies knowingly design addictive platforms and evade meaningful age verification. Your testimony talked about that. In your view, what specific legal requirements beyond just parental controls should Congress evaluate to stop the cycle of exposure and exploitation?
Yeah, so I will say I'm on the extreme end. I would kind of plant my flag in the ground on saying I think Congress should seriously consider that the environment and the underlying design of social media is so harmful to children, it should actually be age restricted out of childhood. The default age for social media has been 13, but not because of a specific law related to social media, but because of COPPA passed in 1996. before social media even existed about data collection. And so I think we really need an updated legal regime that really tries to delay social media as far as possible, because if you talk to parents, almost every parent says, I wish that my child wasn't on social media, but I feel compelled to let them on these apps because every one of their friends is on it. And that, to me, is a classic collective action problem that the government has a very critical role to play in solving, where then each individual parent doesn't have to face that battle on their own. We can say, like alcohol or tobacco, or even operating firearms or driving cars, technologies we've recognized are just too powerful for a child to handle. I think we're seeing that in the way social media has even changed over time, how aggressive the algorithms are, that the entire nature and environment it creates and the underlying design is not a place for children.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. Before I yield, I want to enter 3 articles into the record about Mr. Guffey and his fight from various periodicals in South Carolina. Thank you so much.
Okay.